I'm Dr. Mollie Marti with Resiliency Matters, and today we are speaking with Kirk Ferguson, who served 25 years in the U.S. Army, 23 years in Special Forces as a Green Beret, a Special Ops medic, and a Delta Force operator. Across his 9 combat tours, he received many commendations, including a couple of Purple Hearts and bronze medals. So welcome, Kirk.
Hey, golly, good to be here finally.
Yes, good to see you, always. So while some listeners might understand the world of special ops, I think it's probably new to others. So why don't you start with an overview or a quick introduction to your service and your deployments?
All right. I came in the Army right out of high school, had about 1 month off, straight in at 18 years old, very non-patriotic beginning, just needed a job and, a pair of shoes and an outfit and people that would feed me. So I went in the Army and right in the infantry. From there, made my way to Special Forces very quickly, went through their selection process at less than 2 years in the Army and 19 years old. Went through that, became a medic, served almost 5 years on Special Forces team, mostly throughout Asia, Thailand, Korea, all the different fun garden hotspots over there. And then in 2000, made the move over to Delta Force. I had originally gone over there as a medic. Actually, I was in one of our training courses when 9/11 occurred. I was already over in the unit. From that moment forward, we were doing what we had and all volunteered to go there to do. I did an initial 4 combat deployments as a medical personnel for them, really at the leading edge at the time of all the combat medicine that was going on. And then went all the way back through their selection and training process again and became an operator over there, being the actual assaulter going through the door as opposed to the medic that was coming in behind them. And spent the remainder of my career in that capacity and did 5 more combat deployments as a Delta Force operator.
So there's so much there. You've served as an advisor to Worldmaker for our military resilience programming, and now we're looking at adapting it right to operators and their families. Talk a bit about the mindset of a Special Forces operator.
We are a touch different. I use touch. Really very highly driven individuals, really not satisfied usually with our status quo. It's what drives us to go and find that next level, constantly wanting to be challenged. To many people's surprise, we're not the best soldiers. We don't like to have our uniforms pressed or rules or shiny boots or all the things most people associate with the soldier image, because we're just very performance oriented. Most of us actually went to that side to escape the regimented thought processes of the Army. So very free thinking, very about like training a cat, I would say is really about the best way to describe it.
So we talk a lot about being there for day one for these operators and for all military personnel. Talk about the benefits of bringing a sort of resilience training and psychological, emotional preparation as part of selection and training.
I think, we do a good job. The military has done a good job for years conditioning us and getting us ready to do the job. What has been left out is that psychological piece and really the self-awareness needed to understand when you need that help or when things aren't normal. Really, it's a matter of prioritization. When you want a guy or girl to shoot better, to be in better shape, to do any special skill, you have to train them. It's got to be a part of the thing. But for some reason, we've always treated the mental health and resilience as, you'll get that eventually, or you just pick that along the way up, as we're making you tougher. So I think just that, being aware of it, putting it into the training cycle and giving it just as much of a priority as the shooting, moving, and communicating that we emphasize already.
You tell this story about, I think it was your second tour, and kind of that moment where you realized that resilience and as a skills building process mattered. And you say resilience is often viewed as a person's natural reaction to physical and mental trauma or the grit you were born with. I'm here to tell you that it is a skill and can be honed like any other skill. It also depends tremendously on the people and supports around you. So can you share more about your understanding of why resilience training matters?
Yeah, as you referenced, this first and second deployments, because I was still learning, and really seeing the difference. But I saw the advantage of being a senior special forces soldier, which I was at the time. I was already midway through my career, mid 20s years old, and seeing that versus the 18-year-old, infantryman who had only had basic training. And seeing just those levels of trust that were put into us, the different scenarios we were put in, the medical training, everything, it just built a much more resilient model because we knew we had the people around us who were equally trained, who had gone through all these gates together with us. And it really was I noticed very quickly that we move different, we operate different, even in the same situations when we were both first exposed to our first real combat. Just having that background of all that training, all that confidence that comes from knowing the guys around you are all at that level, and the repetition of having seen those things over and over. I really saw that advantage, and it's a very, very big advantage to have that kind of journeyman's entrance into your first foray versus the brand new person coming, right out of training.
And let's talk about families as well, spouses, kids. You've had this experience, you and your wife being able to stay together through those 25 years of service and raise two boys. And so many others, haven't found their way through. But talk more about what military families need. What does that look like in their experience?
Well, I'm going to say something very, very controversial. What they need to be is to treat it like normal people. We tend to want to give them kid gloves, or we think they need these outrageous special programs. What they need is just access to care, and they need access to good care. Yes, there is a higher strain, but as I say, with both us as the special operators and the spouses, we're not grown on a farm somewhere, in central, the United States where only these people come from. We come from our society. We are from the places we come from. We have all the same issues that everyone around us has. There's a reason that most marriages, half of marriages need divorce anyway. So to really singular that and say that this is a special military problem, we have special constraints that are put on us. No one else. My wife will laugh when someone, complains about their husband's first business trip, and oh my gosh, he's gone for 4 days. I don't know if I can take it. We got married on a Sunday, and I was gone for 30 days. That was our honeymoon. It was me being gone for the first 30 days of our marriage. So there are different constraints, but at the end, what they need is just a caring person who understands and can go through and help them, just as anyone needs. You need a community. And for some spouses, that is found in a group. Some very much respond to sitting around with other spouses and having that common bond. Some people, just like therapy, have no benefit from group therapy, and they need that individual, that ability to, on their own time, their own hours. The spouses have their own lives. They have their own things they're doing. And when we lump them together and call them this military spouse blob and treat it as a singular problem, we're really cutting them short. What they need is that same individualized care that anybody going through a hard time needs.
That's a fabulous point. I won't fight you on that one, Kirk. That we have individual needs, and so much of that, as well as we have that need to be in relationship and have those support networks. Thinking about the operator as part of the family, there really is, you talked about that self-awareness, but talk more about that. Like, you go on a mission, you're singularly focused, you're trained at a high level to do certain things, and they're often a matter of life and death. And then you come home and there's a broken dishwasher, and it's not a matter of life or death. And yet you are being asked to engage, right? That this is a problem. Talk more about, those dynamics.
Yeah, I would say that part is genuinely different for us as the operator and for the spouses. When we go over, we would typically go over for 4 to 5 months was our average cycle that we would go over there. Very unique to us was, you kiss the wife and kids goodbye, you get on the plane, and within 24 hours, you can be doing the job. And you can be doing that for 3 to 4 months, literally pack your things up, and 24 hours later, you're hugging and kissing the wife and the kids again like nothing happened, with nothing. There is no cool down. There is nothing in between. Again, we were very specialized. I don't think that's as common. There are some different things out there. But when you're doing the job, you have to be all in. You really can't have the washing machine on your head when you're planning for real world things. And it sounds cold and calculated, and you just have to, oh my gosh, you have to turn that, but you do. I mean, I think my spouse would tell me she would much rather me be focused on what I'm doing when I'm having to do these things to make me the best at that part of the job. So we do get very compartmentalized out of pure necessity. You absolutely have to. So it is tough, especially early on to learn to ease that as you come back and open up more. And like you said, understand that the washing machine is their priority. It was a major inconvenience for them to have to drag the clothes all the way down to the laundromat, while you were gone. And of course, everything breaks when we're gone. Nothing breaks when you're home. Cars never break down. There's no washing machine floods. No, that only happens when you're gone. I can tell you that for a fact. So it really is highly stressful for them. So understanding that and giving that and breaking your priorities to say, okay, come out of your shell. You've turned this off for this long, but now you really have to give that the respect that's due, because it's very real, and it is a very real problem. If you're back in that mode of I need this and I don't need that and don't bother me with this, it's not going to be a happy homecoming.
Really interesting as you're talking about basically empathy that you need to be practicing, when you step back at home. And I know there's a school of thought that operators should be low empathy as one of the personality traits in screening. How did you find that, playing out, or what is just your take on the role of empathy as an operator, as a leader, as a member of that family?
I actually find this is a very unique thing. I went back and talked to our psychologist as I was retiring, and he went back and looked at some of my stuff, and he said, because we actually found your empathy increased as you were, as these things happen to you. So I think it's crucial. We really do need it. You need it for the broader vision. It will keep you from getting the tunnel vision. Understanding even within our job that there are things that we do that have effects far beyond us. And if you don't bring empathy into those situations, you can make situations worse. So I think purely from the tactical standpoint, empathy is required. It will literally make you better at the job to have that broader vision that is needed. And I think some of the issues you've seen lately with some special operations forces is just that, a complete hyper focus on the job and a lack of empathy that starts to deteriorate those edges, and you're not understanding the larger implications of what you're doing.
Similar conversations going on with our police forces as well.
Very much so.
Well, I want to pick up on veterans and talking about that transition when we come back. Stay with us.
Today, more than ever, you need fast, reliable internet. At Mediacom, we want you to know you can count on us. Our fiber-powered 100% gigabit technology network was built for the future. We have enormous capacity and power and 99.99% network reliability. So even though these are uncertain times, we're prepared, and you can be certain we'll keep your world connected.
I don't remember how it started.
Go to that.
Our back and forth. It always came back. Dad! You probably don't remember what you told me.
That was perfect.
But I heard every word.
If I could go back and change it all, I would. I think I'm gonna miss you the most. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. Maybe it's just the little moments. If I could go back and change it all, if I could go back, I would. But I can't.
Welcome back to Resiliency Matters. We are speaking with Kirk Ferguson, a retired Green Beret, Special Ops medic, and Delta Force operator. Kirk, we were leaving break talking about veterans and what does that process look like? What did it look like for you? Really want to dig into what do veterans need?
Again, my second controversial note, I don't think a lot of things are PTSD and TBI and all the other initials that people assign to our problems. Really, it's a loss of identity. When you give that much of your life to something with that many rules and parameters and so much that it asks from you, it really does take a toll when one day you're no longer a part of that tribe. And our instance, working at the very, very highest levels of special ops, I literally went from my entire history and all the things my family had gone through to walking out and having the badge no longer work and let me in the building and having to call and ask permission to come back into the building I'd spent 13 years in. It's a very, very harsh change that is not just a, drive off post and wave at the flag kind of situation. And I've told this story before, but I had a very hard-hitting moment for myself that I was not even aware of, that I went in to turn in my guns. At the time, I probably had 17, 20 guns assigned to me, somewhere in that range. And I go in and we're, checking them, handing this in, this part. And I knew the armorer very well. I'd known him for about 10 years. And he kind of looked up at me and says, "Hey, man, are you all right?" And I was kind of like, "What are you talking about?" Nothing had registered, all this. And he was kind of like, "Okay." And just kind of like blew it off. Well, I realized a little bit later, I was handing some more stuff in, that my eyes were watering. I was actually tearing up. And I was physically not aware of it. I did not understand what was going on. But somewhere deep inside of me, there was this complete loss of identity. My value, I was handing my value through that window and having it checked off and taken back from me. Because from 18 years old forward, that was where my value was. It was to be behind that gun in some way or another. That was what they paid me for. And I had to be in certain shape. We had to do all these things. But in the end, that was what I was handing back, and knowing it was never coming back. I was never going to have those again. It was not going to be a part of my lifestyle anymore. And it hit me at such a deep level that I was literally tearing up without any knowledge of it, outward at all. So very, very, odd, but revelatory moment for me.
And it's so essential. I mean, you know this from being a Worldmaker insider, that's where the word Worldmaker comes from, that military transition, and how do you help veterans remake that world where they have that sense of purpose and that sense of competence. Your whole value as a human being was connected to and defined by those guns that you were handing off, and that sense of connection that you're stepping away. And now there's a border between you and this place where you were housed for the past 13 years. So you've told some stories that I want to go back and dig a little deeper to that self-awareness. You were talking about, you were tearing up, perhaps you were even crying, right? You didn't even know it. You've also, you shared that working with some psychologists or people that just kind of like to unscrew your brain and hop in, they're helping you see something. So talk about when you thought you were just fine, your body wasn't responding or reacting to stress at all, and what did you learn about that?
Yeah, we were going through a program. It's called NICO. It's actually kind of a de-stress, check you out on the way out program. At the time, it was being held exclusively for like us and the SEAL Team 6 members, and now luckily it has been proliferated throughout the entire military. But what they did, they actually sent us up for a month. We're completely detached. We're sitting around. Nobody's in uniforms. There's nothing militaristic about it. The facility is beautiful. There's literally, bird song being piped in and, walking paths. And it's like a dream. It's like a big spa kind of setting almost. And they introduce us to all the different modalities. One, they take your entire body out, give you the best scan you've ever had just to find all the things, all the little broken parts in there so you can address them. But secondarily, they really show us, we'll do some art therapy, some music therapy, some, just whatever. Well, in one of my sessions was biofeedback. And I went in there, and this was week 2. So now we're fully adjusted. I'm sitting around in sweats. I've been there. This is for me personally, this is three years post my past combat deployment. So 3 years I've not even been, in a combat zone. My last 3 years, I kind of went off and did some different stuff. So the lady looks over at me, very experienced, very smart psychologist is sitting there, and she's talking me up. Hey, here's what your background, this sort of thing. Then she goes, how you feeling today? And I was like, this is great. She's like, what do you mean? I said, well, I'm sitting around in my pajamas and, had a great breakfast and this is great. She looked over and goes, okay, why are you hyperventilating? And I was like, what are you talking about? And of course, being a medic, I'm like, okay, let me see. And I look over and sure enough, I'm blasting off at 22, 24 breaths a minute. And I thought it was the calmest I could have ever have been. And that's when she was like, okay, tell me about your past. And we dug in a little bit and she was like, yeah, your body can't just stop that. You've been doing this. You've had people, in your brain off and on, literally trying to kill you for 13 plus years. You can't just turn that off. There is something there that's constantly on that switch. And I tell a lot of people that story strictly because I was always the calmest guy in the room. I always had to be. So I was never stressed. You ask probably people who know me for 10 years and haven't even heard me raise my voice. My kids might differ, but for the most people that I worked around will tell you, yeah, I was a very low key guy. So I saw myself as that low stress person. And now here I am 3 years removed from combat. I'm getting ready to retire. I'm just thinking this is no big deal. But that was my aha moment. That's when I realized that there were things going on physiologically as a response to things that were happening however long, or the buildup, all the rocks in the backpack that we carry around with us had an effect. And I thought I was above it. And quite honestly, had I not had a scientific hard look like that, you would have had a very hard time convincing me. And I bring that up because one, I was being hard-headed, but two, I try to share that with folks because we can't outthink it. You can't go beyond it. You're not above it, no matter what level you've reached. There's something out there that everything has an effect on you. And so without that, I don't know where I would be, because that's now where I reference when I feel things start to bubble up or get a little on edge. I'm like, okay, there it is. That's what she pointed out to me those years ago. And now I know what it is and I can kind of settle down.
So important, that self-awareness. And I'm just thinking about, this day and age, people can, be wearing their Whoops or their Apple Watches or whatever they're wearing and know, how many, what their breathing rate is and heart rate is and so much more. Your comment of you as a most calm guy in the room, you also tell a story of when you knew that was really important. And like I said, we have some military following this conversation, but we have a lot of leaders, and in their own way, they're dedicated, right? And they have their purpose and they're working hard. What's a lesson you learned as a medic on the importance of being the calmest guy in the room?
Yeah, of course, for the training, we are it. That's kind of the basis of our special ops medical training. So we're used to just doing everything all at once, all by ourselves, and it's always on a stopwatch during all your training. Everything's fast, do this, and so that's kind of how you're trained, and that works in training. And then the first time I was around one of our own guys really getting hurt, I ran in there like a super medic with my cape flying behind me and sliding in and doing everything fast and get out of my way. And I looked around the room and realized that I had just stressed everyone out in that room. A lot of big, tough, scary men in that room, but it's the first time they'd seen their own hurt. And that has a different effect. And so if you come in as the medic and you're hyped up, eyes this big, grabbing stuff and making things happen fast, you just elevated the whole room. Now that stress they had is now going higher and higher and higher. So I literally learned I had to develop a persona. I had to turn all of that off and just be the calm guy. So I would get to the point where I would literally run to the room, stop, put my hands and let go of my rifle, put my hands in my pockets, and then walk around the corner and say, hey guys, what's up? And that little change just de-escalated the whole room. I mean, everyone was like this, and all of a sudden the medic walks in and he's like, hey, what's happening? Okay, you do this, go ahead and get a helicopter moving, do all that. And okay, let me see what's going on. Then I can get down there and my eyes can be this big and I can deal with the problem, but you don't give that away. And I think as far as leadership goes, I mean, I've definitely carried that into what I do now. I'm a chief of staff at working as an executive level in a protective door company, and they don't see my eyes ever get this big. If something's happening, somebody's not answering the phone, orders aren't getting filled, we're not going to make a deadline. It's hey guys, no one's bleeding, settle down, we've got this. We'll be fine. I'll be the guy, I'll make the phone call, I'll get yelled at. And so I think, but that's where that carries over to any leadership position, is they respond to you. So even if you're not the leader normally, when something happens and it's your world, you are the leader, whether you realize it or not. So that persona you carry in and the way you carry that room is going to determine the outcome.
And again, there's so much science behind this, and co-regulation and what our brains are doing and bodies are doing to regulate. But I love, your leadership perspectives and experience. Another thing we're seeing with leaders is this growing appreciation of diversity. And we've long said at Worldmaker that resilience is inherently a process that embraces diversity, that we know that we perform better and that we thrive together. And wondering if you have a story of when diversity helped your unit work better or achieve your mission.
Well, I can tell that it made me a better person at what I do then and now. My last 3 years, as I told you, I kind of went off to a little different sector and doing some different things. For the first time in my 22 years solid, I actually had a female boss. I had never even worked with a woman up until that point, other than passing in the hallway. The job being what it is at the time. This is before the new rules, and they weren't even allowed to be there. So I had a very unique situation where I had a woman for a boss. And it was such a refreshing difference just to hear how she handled problems, how she took the time to coach and mentor me on some things that my other peers would not have or had not done before, to kind of walk by and, hey, you might want to temper this, or hey, this will. It was really just a whole new perspective for me. I didn't bristle at it. I was kind of like, hey, this is really, really nice, just to have a different whole look at this thing. And it's really done nothing but help me significantly in my civilian life, now that I've gotten out and I'm found a much more diverse. We had a very kind of specific, stereotype, sadly enough, it's there because it's true, of the guys in my unit. So it was very nice to have that brush. So she'll never see this, but Mary, thank you. It was very good just to see a totally different way of handling things. And it gave me a whole new, deck of cards to play with as I went forward.
Yeah, it's a diversity of experiences and philosophies and leadership styles, all of those things come to the table. All right, one quick last question. We have a lot of people who have a whole lot going on, and you have experienced tremendous levels of demands across the board. What final piece of advice do you want to give to people that need a little help managing stress in their lives today?
Just the thing that gets you, everything's temporary. The biggest thing that you have going on right now, go back 1 year, 5 year, 10 years, and think of the thing that was the biggest thing in your life at that moment and how little it matters now. It's not to delineate or take away the importance of what you have now. It's simply to provide perspective. That's literally where when I start to feel the blood boil, or I'm starting to get stressed, or I'm starting to do this, that perspective is everything. Sit back. Again, no one's bleeding. No one's going to die. Nothing's. What's the worst thing that could happen if this thing that I think is terrible happens? Most 99 times out of 100 will be fine on the other side. So stopping, taking that breath, and getting that perspective is crucial.
I'm going to quote you, Kirk. Let's go help some people. You often say that. Thank you for doing that today. And thank you for joining us on MediaCom MC22, your local programming leader.